Hello, and welcome back, family, to my channel. My name is Huddy, and tonight we're talking New York by Night. As always, this video is not scripted, and these opinions are mine and mine alone. Just a quick disclaimer before we start, some of you may know that I am a community ambassador for World of Darkness, and so any teasers that you might see for upcoming episodes of New York by Night were likely made by me, meaning I did have early access, but I recorded my thoughts, or at the very least wrote down some bullet points before moving on to the next episode. Well, here we are back again, family. Season 1 ended at the end of August, and we're back a month later with Season 2. World of Darkness is truly keeping us at Hunger 1. Not 0, of course, because we can never have enough of that sweet, deep content. Now, as most of you already know, but in case you don't, Season 1 of New York by Night was a fledgling Anarch coterie, and Season 2 is a fledgling Camarilla coterie. But both of these stories are taking place in generally the same time frame, with Season 3 set to cross these stories over in some way. Our Camarilla coterie consists of Khalida the Ventru, played by Nora Ibrahim, Coco the La Sombra, played by Cynthia Marie, Braun the Nosferatu, played by Xander Jeanneret, and Michelle Wen Bradley, playing Kiem the Toreador. Also, I love the contacts being rocked by Nora and Cynthia, and appreciate the lip scar on Xander. It's fabulously done. Jason begins the episode talking about New York City, where our story takes place, framing it as a character in and of itself, which is very true for any game of Vampire the Masquerade. Jason then moves on to talk about the lore of New York City, specifically the Great War between the Camarilla and Sabbat. I discussed this in detail in my Season 1 Episode 1 recap, so if you want that breakdown, you can watch it here. But what's important to know is that the Camarilla drove out the Sabbat and claims much of the city as its own, outside of certain areas such as the Bronx, under the Ventru Prince Helena Panhard. The episode begins at a 5-star hotel in the heart of Manhattan called the Sterling. We join Braun, who's getting hassled by a member of staff for his non-adherence to the dress code, as Braun is wearing a tank top with suspenders and a beanie. I just have to say, from the moment Xander opened his mouth as Braun and that intense accent spilled out, I was absolutely in love. I was the embodiment of this meme.
I've only had Arlo for a day and a half, but if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
Braun threatens the employee, named Farrell, with his own dress code, namely his 2 fists, and instead asks after the man he came here to see, Rafferty. Now, Rafferty is a name we heard many times in Season 1, and it is the name of Fuego's sire. Khalida and Coco come up to Braun as Farrell leaves without giving an answer, and Coco asks him if he is trying to make a scene. Braun calls her princess, but Coco shuts that down pretty quickly, warning him to shut his trap, while Khalida asks if Braun is lost. Braun claims to be looking for Rafferty, and Kiem joins the group, claiming to be there for the same reason. This is very reminiscent of Season 1, Episode 1, where the Anarch coterie, strangers to each other, were all waiting to meet the boss of the area, Richter. This group of fledglings all introduce themselves, with Coco even exclaiming that she is a lady of the church who enjoys the word of God, a very old school somber thing to say, and it soon becomes apparent that Khalida is no stranger to the Sterling, nor to Rafferty, and at this moment I had an inkling about her, but I'm getting ahead of myself, as Farrell returns with a loner jacket for Braun that he reluctantly wears around his waist. One of the mortal patrons sarcastically mocks Braun's outfit, and Khalida responds by activating awe and embarrassing him in front of his date that's on his arm. Kiem talks a bit about herself and claims to be new to the city, but is settled now and ready to put down some roots. Finally, they are led to Rafferty's office, and Braun gives the jacket back to Farrell, much to his relief. Rafferty is a tall, athletic silver fox, and makes the point to greet Khalida first with a kiss to her hand, and it is here that we learn that Rafferty is indeed Khalida's sire, as I had suspected, which makes her Fuego's sister from the same mister, or something more vampire-y like broodmate. Kiem and Braun sit, Braun even manspreads. Khalida remains standing in relative closeness to her sire Rafferty, while Coco, once again pulling a classic La Sombra move, stands with the shadows of the room, concealing themselves as much as possible. Again, much as with Season 1, Jason goes around the room and asks what everyone wants to convey to Rafferty with their body language. Kiem with an openness, Braun with a sense of dominance, but when we get to Coco, who wants to convey an obeisance to him, rolls a bestial failure, and her beast urges her to give in to the ruthlessness of her clan. Now, Coco speaks back to her beast with an accented voice voice, which confused me at first and made me consider that she's faking something about her person or has some sort of duplicitous nature, which I know, a vampire with secrets, what a shocking idea. But Cynthia explained to me that the accent is to indicate that her beast speaks to her in Spanish and she replies in kind, which was a real oh duh moment for me. I was super happy to have embarrassed myself in front of Cynthia. Good times. Ultimately, Coco decides to spend a willpower to keep herself in control, but it is futile and she succumbs to her clan compulsion of ruthlessness, which states in the 5th edition Chicago by Night book, to the La Sombra, failure is not an option. Their blood will urge them to any act convincible to reach their goals, whether in the moment or in Byzantine plots lasting centuries. Any setback is felt profoundly, and they quickly escalate to the most ruthless of methods until they achieve their aims. For Coco, this is of course proving herself to the Camarilla, as her and her clan's position in it is tenuous at best, given its history. Rafferty begins by informing them of the final death of the Anarch leader, Boss Callahan, and the rising of a new one, a man named Torque. And again, I break all of this down for you in Season 1, Episode 1's recap if you want more information. Rafferty also offhandedly mentions that the Anarchs believe they are not allowed in Manhattan, but it's more of a useful fiction, as it's impossible to enforce on an island with such a large population, both mortal and immortal. Of course, that could explain why Sabbat activity is happening unchecked, but that's a discussion maybe for a later episode. Rafferty also mentions Annabelle to the coterie, the rebel leader from Los Angeles, that the Camarilla is worried about, worried that they might encourage Torque into making the Anarchs live up to their rebellious and revolutionary name. Braun asks if they can take Annabelle out should they come across her, to which Rafferty says, only if you can do it discreetly. Braun hand waves the idea, but Coco, fixated on proving herself, rattles off the first tradition, the most important amongst Kindred, but especially the Camarilla, the Masquerade, i.e. hide the existence of vampires. So we haven't talked much about the Camarilla in Season 1 for obvious reasons, and every installment of the Ivory Tower varies somewhat from city to city, but they all have the traditions, a set of fundamental laws that must be adhered to, sometimes on punishment of final death in the form of a blood hunt. The traditions are the following. The Masquerade. Thou shalt not reveal thy true nature to those not of the blood, doing such shall renounce thy claims of blood. 2. The domain. Thy domain is thine own concern, all others owe thee respect while in it, none may challenge thy word while in thy domain. 3. The progeny. Thou shalt only sire another with the permission of thine elder. If thou createst another without thine elder's leave, both thou and thy progeny shall be slain. 4. The accounting. Those thou create are thine own children. Until thy progeny shall be released, thou shalt command them in all things. Their sins are thine to endure. 5. Hospitality. Honor one another's domain. When thou comest to a foreign city, thou shalt present thyself to the one who ruleth there. Without the word of acceptance, thou art nothing. And 6. The destruction. Thou art forbidden to destroy another of thy kind. The right of destruction belongeth only to thine elder. Only the eldest among thee shall call the blood hunt. And in note to that last one, the many Camarilla cities interpret elder or the eldest as the prince, meaning less about age and more about standing in society. Rafferty goes on to talk about some misconceptions in the Camarilla, that they forbid technology, but that's not entirely true either. Rather, it would look strange in the attempt of blending into mortal society if one did not have a cell phone. But what is paramount is that no kindred activity is discussed via these devices. But eventually, Rafferty gets down to business. An art gallery called the Frosted Glass in Chelsea, a neighborhood on the west side of Manhattan, is hosting some unusual art that supposedly is affecting mortals. He asks the group to investigate, and should this be a breach of the Masquerade, for them to take care of it. Should they accomplish this, Rafferty will owe them all a boon, the most precious currency among the kindred. Coco asks if there is anyone responsible for making sure kindred uphold their boons, an accounting of some kind, and Rafferty tells her that he's heard in some courts, like Chicago, the Keeper of Elysium does this. This is in fact another kindred named Annabelle in the Chicago court, but a very different one to the Spark of the Resistance from LA. Here in New York City, however, Rafferty suggests that the next time they are all in Elysium, to seek out someone named Thomas Arturo. My God, where to begin talking about Thomas Arturo? Arturo was embraced while he was working at a prestigious architecture firm in the 70s, designing a project for an exceptionally wealthy client who happened to be a toreador. Initially, Arturo was distraught at his new life, but eventually he was able to reconcile with the idea, climbing the ladder of kindred social elite, designing other havens as he had done for his sire, and eventually being given the prestigious title of a harpy, an opinion leader and trendsetter trendsetter to whom other kindred look when it comes to matters of taste, style, philosophy, and politics. Now, without going into the plot of the game of Coteries of New York, which I suggest you try because it's great, let's just say that as far as we know, Arturo has Prince Panhard blood bonded to him, and by extension, Boss Callahan, who was, before his final death, bound to Prince Panhard. How this bond came to be is unknown, but it likely makes Arturo the most influential and powerful kindred in New York City. Rafferty dotes on his child before dismissing the group, exclaiming that there's no one better than Kalita to represent him, and Braun offhandedly remarks that Daddy is proud. Rafferty agrees and names Braun's sire, a Nosferatu named Glassjaw, apparently, and hopes that one night Braun will make Glassjaw just as proud. Braun scoffs, but Rafferty presses on, asking if he's still running that fight club, to which Braun quickly cuts him off, claiming we're not supposed to talk about that.
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Coco calls him a regular Tyler Durden, and Braun expresses his appreciation for the Fight Club reference. As the group leaves, Rafferty gives them all business cards with his number on them. Coco laments at not having a phone, to which Kiem expresses concern. Coco feigns confusement and claims that she left, hers ran out of battery, she left it at home, and asks to borrow Kiem's. Of course, as soon as Coco touches the phone with a low technology roll, Kiem's phone begins smoking and is rendered useless. This is of course part of the La Sombra Bane, which states again in the Chicago by Night 5th edition book, anyone seeing the reflection or recording, live or otherwise, of a La Sombra vampire can instantly recognize them for what they are, provided they know what they're looking for. People with no prior knowledge will know something is wrong, but likely attribute the distortion to irregularities in the reflecting surface or recording errors. In addition, use of modern communication technology, including making simple phone calls, requires a technology test at difficulty 2 plus their Bane severity, as microphones have similar problems with the voice of a La Sombra as cameras with their image. Kiem discards the phone and informs Coco that she owes her $980, but Coco makes no indication that she plans to pay her back. This newly formed coterie heads off to the Frosted Glass and discusses their individual skills, which are majority, subterfuge, stealth, and presence, while Braun has a more direct and violent approach. Kalita calls for a town car driven by someone in her employ, if not her ghoul, named Wilcox, and while they make their way to Chelsea, they discuss the strategy of the investigation. Braun seems extra nervous at the idea of just scoping out the joint and talking to people, not to mention he has to wear a jacket, so Kalita suggests that he just refer to the paintings as divine or pedantic, and move on to another one if he doesn't notice anything strange about it. And Braun really latches onto the word pedantic to great effect throughout the rest of the episode. Inside the gallery, the owner Carabo greets Kalita and her guests, and Kiem, perhaps showing off her toreador tendencies, compliments his asymmetrical earlobes. Carabo takes the unique compliment with stride and asks Braun what he thinks of the art. Braun nervously shrugs and mumbles, "Seems pedantic, you know," and it was just perfect and continues to be perfect every time he says it throughout the episode. Carabo tells them about their premier new artist, a woman named Lizzie. Now we remember Lizzie, of course, from season 1, a member of Richter's coterie at the Cage, and more than likely a Malkavian. Lizzie has long unkempt black hair that obscures her face and dresses in what I would describe as destroyed couture, very similar to Amalia the Nosferatu in LA by Night. When the coteries see her, they see she is not alone, but is escorted by a tall, well-built man wearing a shirt that says "Stay Relevant." Once again, we know from season 1 that this must be Airbox, another member of Richter's coterie and the one who threw Ray out of the window. Coco immediately heads into the shadows and watches the people, being closest to a couple admiring some of the art. Braun takes a different approach, heading up to an obvious art critic, opening with, "All seems pretty pedantic in here, huh?" and proceeds to ask him what he thinks the best piece in the gallery is. Braun obviously knows, but he just wants the critic's opinion. Surprisingly, the critic is amused and assumes Braun is part of some sort of performative theater. The critic launches into how art isn't about money and materials, but rather how it makes someone feel, and then suggests that the large slab of concrete with graffiti on it is likely the most priceless piece. Kiem decides to head right up to Lizzie and Airbox, "We love a straight shooting Rose," and she quickly detects that she is Kindred and immediately tries to ingratiate herself to Lizzie and match her energy, even lowering her own voice to a hushed whisper to converse with her. In the process, Kiem asks for some of Lizzie's quote-unquote beautiful hair, and Lizzie seems open to the idea, telling Kiem to first observe her paintings and tell her what she thinks, and then she will give Kiem some of her hair. Kalita decides to stay with Karabo and get a VIP tour around the gallery, and quickly becomes aware of a few paintings that seem to be causing the humans to exclaim a great deal of adoration, more than seems appropriate given the locale and situation. Kalita tries to use awe to get one of their attentions, but it doesn't seem to work very well. The painting holds a greater allure than this beautiful venture. Coco, eavesdropping from the shadows, hears the couple talking about someone. The woman asking if the man can do something. That she, quote, came out of the Bronx last night and slept at home for the first time since it happened, unquote. The man tells her to be patient, that he's working on it, so this is clearly about Seraph. The man and woman must be Alicia, Seraph's mother, who is a ghoul to her sire, Argus. Which also means that the concrete slab with the graffiti on it is more than likely a work of art by Seraph herself. This also means that Season 2 starts in between episodes 6 and 7 of Season 1, as episode 6 is when Seraph goes into Manhattan with Francis the Thin Blood to see her mother. Side note, Jason will refer to the woman as Angela instead of Alicia, likely confusing the name of Isaac's ghoul with Seraph's mom to A names. So in this recap, I will continue to refer to her as Alicia. This is not Angela living a double life with Argus, or so we hope. As Kiem makes her way to one of Lizzie's art pieces, she grabs Braun and brings him with her. With both of them making unsuccessful willpower rolls, Kiem opts to succeed at a cost, but with at least one success. Braun becomes instantly enamored with the painting, and Kiem does as well, but it quickly turns to disdain. And with Lethal Body, again, we love a Toreador with potence, and a possible scene queen, she tears into the painting, ripping it off the wall into pieces of confetti. Kalita, seeing this, immediately turns to Karabo and offers to buy all of the paintings in the gallery, excusing her guests as performance artists. Coco comes out of the shadows and attempts to compel Alicia to walk away, but again, failed rolls plague this coterie, and she refuses, exclaiming that her daughter Seraph's art is on display here and Coco has no right to tell her to leave. Airbox reacts a little more violently and, as he loves to do, throws Kiem through the frosted glass window the gallery is named for. Braun grapples Airbox successfully and screams out to his coterie to fuck up the paintings. Coco, taking the cue, pulls a fire alarm and water begins to pour down, destroying much of the art Kalita just purchased. Speaking of Kalita, she runs up to the art critic and uses the forgetful mind, convincing him that he was never here. Rather, he was on a lover's tryst. Many of the patrons flee out the front, but Alicia and Argus head toward the back entrance, and Coco gives chase. Braun, showing up poor Ray from Season 1, pile drives Airbox into the ground, telling him that he's going to make his own art as he begins punching Airbox in the face. But Airbox is no slouch, of course, and he kicks Braun straight up into the ceiling. Kiem, perhaps taking a cue from Braun, tries to tackle Lizzie, who attempts to defend herself by staring at Kiem, but whatever she was doing, Kiem shakes it off successfully and grabs Lizzie, pulling out some of her hair in the process, intending to force her to keep her promise. Coco catches up to the fleeing couple, activating Arms of Araman and an Oblivion power that animates literal darkness into a weaponized tendril and encircles them. But Argus employs the Ravnos favorite of chemistry, forcing her to see flames licking at her face, causing her to lose concentration on her tendrils. Kalita, up in the office with Karabo, uses Mesmerize to get the name and contact info for all of the artists in his roster, including Seraph and Lizzie. She then feeds on him and then rearranges his memory of the night as well. And this is where episode 1 ends. I can't believe Jason would leave us on a cliffhanger. How rude.
You really are the most devious bastard in New York City.
But also absolutely perfect, because this could not have gone any worse, and the family loves a disaster coterie. If you haven't already, please go follow The World of Darkness on Twitch and YouTube, and if you can, sub to those channels as well. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to me and let me know your thoughts on Season 2, Episode 1, A City That Never Sleeps, in the comments. As always, I'll see you in the next one.